Shabbat Shalom, Parashat Shoftim. Moshe Rabbeinu continues hammering away at the Jewish people, making sure that they understand clearly what responsibilities are riding on their shoulders now that they are about to enter the land of Israel. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lach b'chol sha'arecha. You must put a proper judicial system, not just on a national level, but every single town must have a hierarchy, must have a judicial system that will be responsible for the moral conduct of the people. This moral conduct is at the heart of the parsha, as Moshe Rabbeinu goes through a variety of laws that relate to the proper social conduct, the responsibilities that the judges have to make sure that the law of the land is upheld, the danger that we must be aware of from false prophets or from people that might try to subdue us, to attract us into idolatry, the mechanism by which we have to take care of such prophets, the mechanism by which we must take care of entire towns that are lured into worshipping idols. And finally, Moshe Rabbeinu details for us the proper conduct that we must have as we prepare to go out to war. But at the end of the parasha, we're introduced to one last moral system that raises an interesting question. This is the parasha of Egla Arufa. We are told that if a body is found that clearly has been murdered outside of a town, lying in a place that is not inhabited by anyone, we must measure the distance to the nearest town to this lost Jewish soul. And when we find which town is closest to this terrible murder scene, the town that is closest must assume responsibility for the fact that a person had been killed in close proximity to their town. Now, no one is accusing directly the people of this town for killing this person, but nonetheless they have to assume responsibility. And the procedures are such in which a very particular type of calf is taken down to the nearest river, is there slaughtered, after the elders of this town must place their hands on top of this particular calf and proclaim, "Our hands did not spill this blood, and our eyes have not seen who has taken this life." Nonetheless, behooving to God to forgive the people for such a horrific event that happened so close to our town. And so we learn that one is not just responsible for what one actually goes out and does, but one is responsible for his entire environment, his entire surrounding. And if such an event could happen in close proximity to one's town, then it is behooving upon the town to take a careful look at how they are conducting themselves. For there is a chance for a murderer to come out from their midst. This parasha, however, was mentioned to us many parashot ago. It is interesting that this is the one particular parasha that the Midrash chooses to tell us was the learning topic of Yaakov and Yosef, when Yosef was a young boy, sitting and learning with him long before he was sent into slavery. This is, in fact, the last part that Yaakov and Yosef sat and learned before he was abducted and sent away. We are brought this information through a very interesting pasuk. You see, after Yosef reveals himself to his brothers and sends them back to inform his dear father, his elderly father, that indeed he is still alive after all these years of mourning, he is alive and that he rules all of Egypt. He feared that his father would not believe his brothers. So he sends them with agalot. He sends them with chariots led by young calves, all resembling these particular calves that need to be taken for Egla Arufa, to hint to his father, "Abba, remember, look, this is the last part of the Torah we learned together. These are the halachot that we learned together." Indeed, Yaakov sees the agalot. It says, "Vayarat agalot Vatachi ruach Yaakov avihem. And the spirit of Yaakov was once again lifted, and he became filled with life. The Midrash obviously is not trying to actually argue that this is what they were studying. After all, the Torah was not in front of them. These laws were not really given to them. And even if Yaakov, through his mastery of conduct in life and purity of life, managed to find ways to adhere to all of the laws that God has given to us, these particular nuances were not available for them to study. What the Midrash is really trying to allude to is Yosef's message to his father. And that as Yosef understood, after all the years of subjugation and slavery, all the years of his rise to power, and his longing for reconnecting with his family, that long ago when he was a young boy, and he had everything to say about his brothers, complaining, tattletaling, speaking badly about them, that in fact, if there was a problem did not rest in his brothers, but rather in himself. The problem lied in the fact that he was unable to look outside of his own behavior and realize that if there is misconduct around him, it is his responsibility. And the place to start is by looking at his own behavior and how his behavior could have a positive influence on those around him. Instead of isolating himself, instead of thinking of himself as sitting in an ivory tower, he should have been looking at his brothers as a brother. He should have been looking for ways in which he could influence them in a positive way. And in fact, that is what his father was trying to teach him. And so Yosef sends a message back to his father saying, Abba, after all these years I have learned. I have learned. And I waited to see a sign that my brothers know how to stand together. And when Yehudah stood up and declared his absolute commitment to Binyamin, I knew that indeed my brothers have learned to live together. And now I, Yosef, have to learn to do the same. And indeed I am ruler of a great land. But this power was given to me for one particular purpose, to strengthen and secure my brothers. And once again, I am ready to stand beside you and make Am Yisrael whole. Eglah Rufa represent for us the responsibilities that we have to one another, and how no one is allowed to hide behind his ivory tower and say, oh, well, I am behaving just fine. Everyone else's behavior is not my problem. No, my dear friends. If we want to succeed in this land, we need to understand that everyone's conduct is our responsibility. And if there is something wrong, the place to start searching for correction is right here inside. And from the power that we find from correcting ourselves inside, we could reach out to others. We embarked upon the month of Elul. We started a long journey into Tshuva. The time is ticking. Rosh Hashanah is almost here. You want to start correcting? Look around you. Make sure that on that moment on Yom Kippur night, when we say Kol Nidre, when we ask for permission to pray with those transgressors, make sure that all those transgressors are standing beside you in shul, ready to accept God's rule above them. Make sure that you live your life in such a way that casts a positive shadow on everyone that is around you, that your eyes are always open to those that are in need. And so we will be able to become a united people in our land. Shabbat Shalom.